The AFE Momentum GT intake that we have on the table today should appeal to the 2018 and newer EcoBoost powered Mustang owners out there who might be after a premium, no tune required intake to help deliver more power and better throttle response by increasing the airflow by over 24% compared to your factory airbox. Now, this particular AFE intake will combine a sealed enclosure or sealed airbox along with AFE's signature Pro Dry S filter and a solid 2-year warranty, all for right around the low $500 price point. Let's focus in on some of the features here with the Momentum GT from AFE, and one biggie that I always like to point out when we're talking intakes, especially one like this, is that you are getting a very high quality sealed enclosure or sealed airbox design that will ultimately be the best bet when it comes to keeping your intake air temperatures down and your horsepower up. Listen, those open element style intake systems on the site here, they certainly sound very cool, they look very cool under the hood, but they can be affected negatively by hot engine bay air, leading to a loss in performance. Now, the sealed enclosure that we have here today will tap into your EcoBoost Mustang's factory cold air ducting immediately on the front of the car, but I also like how this option has this little portion right here along with a removable plug. According to AFE, this is going to be a secondary inlet to basically draw air in from the inner fender of your EcoBoost Mustang, which is cool, right? Something that other intakes in the category certainly don't offer. And if you're not crazy about the design, they do give you that plug here to essentially eliminate that and just stick with the factory cold air ducting that this system does utilize. But let's talk about what matters most, at least to a lot of owners out there, when looking at an aftermarket intake system like this, and that of course is performance. Now, the AFE is going to deliver in that regard, again, increasing the airflow by 24% over the factory setup. And as a result, you are going to be looking at some pretty solid gains and some pretty realistic gains. I do want to really emphasize that, because AFE is claiming about 7 horsepower, 9 pound-feet of torque with this system installed, again, gained over your factory airbox. And by the way, guys, that is without the use of any tuning, canned or custom. The system does not require the use of any tuning whatsoever, and to see that you are picking up, some meaningful gains with the system installed, that certainly is nice to hear. And again, these are realistic gains. Some manufacturers like to throw out big numbers when it comes to a no tune required intake such as this, but AFE keeps it real here. And this is kind of what I tell a lot of owners out there when installing something like this. Best case scenario for a lot of guys, it's gonna be those high single digit, low double digit gains, and it seems like the Momentum falls right in line with that. But let's shift gears and talk about construction a bit more here, guys. And the AFE kits consistently rank among some of the nicest in the categories from a build perspective, and this kit is no different. Now, the airbox, again, is a one-piece design. It's made from polyethylene, while the tube itself is also going to be made from that same material, that polyethylene, but has been computer designed here to help increase, again, that airflow and performance. And this thing is dyno tested according to AFE to increase that power, as we talked about earlier. Now, inside that airbox will be one of AFE's Pro Dry S filters. This guy is about 8 inches tall, consists of 3 layers of a high flow synthetic material that does not require any maintenance, any oil or anything like that. Obviously, an occasional cleaning may be necessary depending on your driving conditions and where you live, but one of the nice things about this system is this little window here kind of allows you to keep an eye on that filter at all times, checking the condition over the years. I don't anticipate you're gonna need to clean this thing a lot, but you can tell when things do get a bit dirty thanks to the white material, and that clear window kind of lets you keep an eye on things as the years progress. Now, finally, guys, the kit does include all of the necessary hardware, very nice clamps as well. It's little things when you start spending this kind of money that you might not expect, but you look forward to. And things like the clamps, yes, I know it's silly to talk about, are even considerably nicer than what you might see with a more budget-friendly kit. Last but not least here, guys, this kit is backed by a 2-year limited warranty, just in case you should run into any issues. Price point for the AFE, again, certainly isn't going to be the most budget-friendly system in the category. In fact, you're looking at, I would say, right around that low $500 mark. Certainly does make this one of the more expensive options on the site, at least at the time of this video. With that being said, still not quite as expensive as options like the Corsa, for instance. That's gonna cost you a couple $100 more than the AFE, but just know in general, when you start looking into a sealed enclosure, if this is really what you wanna go with, you will be spending a little bit more at the end of the day when compared to those open element style designs. All right, last but not least here, guys, let's talk a bit more about the install. Site's gonna correctly peg this one at a pretty mundane 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. Call it an hour or so to complete from start to finish using some pretty basic hand tools. But now to give you a better idea of how this one will go down in the garage or driveway at home, check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown.
The tools you'll need for this project are a 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch drive ratchets, a 7, 8, 10, 12, and a 20 millimeter socket, an extension, a swivel joint, and a pair of needle nose pliers. Hi everyone, today we're installing a cold air intake on our EcoBoost Mustang. But first, let's watch a short video on how to uninstall the stock intake.
All right guys, first things first, we have to disconnect the negative cable on our battery just to keep things safe. What you're gonna do is remove your battery cover from your engine bay, set that aside, 10 millimeter socket, loosen up the bolt, remove your negative cable on the battery. First step in uninstalling our factory airbox is to use a 7 millimeter socket to loosen up the band clamp. Holding on the factory airbox here, we're gonna disconnect our sensor, pop off a couple of clips on the airbox itself, and pull it off. Next step to remove our factory air filter is to grab your ratchet, small extension, and your 10 millimeter socket, and remove the bolt holding it to the firewall. All right, there's a couple of hoses we have to disconnect from the factory tubing leading back to the turbo. Now I'm gonna use needle nose pliers to disconnect some of the hose clamps. I can do some by hand with my thumb, which I'll show you in just a second. And then for the last clamp holding it to the turbo, you're gonna wanna have a decent extension, possibly a swivel socket to make your life easier, and then a 7 millimeter socket for your last clamp. So what we're gonna do now, disconnect those hoses with the needle nose, and we'll work from there. All right, so we're gonna use our needle nose to disconnect the hose clamp on our air bypass valve hose. Go ahead and pinch that. If you are physically able, which I apparently am not. So here is this gray plastic PCV hose connect that you're going to remove. You can pinch this back with your needle nose pliers, or you can reach your finger in there. It's a little hot. Push up on the connect and disconnect it from the hose. All right, we've got our extension on our ratchet, our 7 mil at the end of a universal swivel joint. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen up the clamp at our turbo. All right, can rotate our clamp here and we'll be able to disconnect our hose from the turbo. And remove your factory hose from the engine bay.
So before we can install our new box, there's a couple things that we need to take care of. One, we need to remove this grommet here because we're going to use that for this post right here when we install the new one. And also we need to remove the grommet and washer from the old one and insert that into the new one to be able to secure it to the body. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to pull down on this rubber grommet here. So we're just going to pull down on this grommet here until it pops off. And for the other one, what we're going to do is slide the grommet out, slide this washer out from the bottom side here, and then we can go ahead and push the grommet out. Now, once we've got that out, we can go ahead and install the grommet into the new box and just kind of work it around until it is seated into place. Once that's in place like so, We'll go ahead and reinstall the spacer. And then what we'll do is we can put this on here right now just to hold it into place. And now let's work on our intake tube itself. So the first thing we're going to do is install our PCV fitting here into this brass fitting on the tube itself. Now it is recommended that you put some sort of a sealant on here like Teflon tape to make sure that it doesn't leak. Now we're not going to do that on ours because we're not making this a permanent change. So once you've got it wrapped up with your Teflon tape, let's go ahead and screw that in. And then you can use a ratchet and a 20mm deep socket to tighten that down. Now you don't have to tighten this down real tight, just make sure that it's snug, and that'll take care of that. Next thing we need to do is insert our grommet and our fitting for our air temperature sensor when we put that back in. So we'll go ahead and install our grommet. And just work it into place. Once you've got it into place, go ahead and insert the plastic fitting. Now I will tell you that the fitting for this temperature sensor is going to be a tight fit, so you may want to consider using some sort of a spray lube to ease the installation when you push this in. Now that we've got it locked into place, we can go ahead and get our intake installed. Now when we install our new air box, you want to make sure that this end of the air box here fits into the fitting. There's a plastic fitting right underneath this cover here up against the grill. So you want to make sure that this end of it here fits in there when you set it in place. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now with our air box in place, we'll go ahead and reinstall the 10mm bolt in the corner and tighten it down with our 10mm socket. Now we can go ahead and insert our filter into the air box. We'll slide our large clamp over the outer edge of the air box and just tighten it down enough to hold it in place. And to do this, we're going to use our 12mm socket. And once we've got that done, we can go ahead and install our tube. Now before we install our intake tube, we're going to go ahead and put our coupler on the end of it. Slide the large end over the end of the tube. Then slide our clamp over the top and just snug it up enough to hold it in place. Now we can go put the other clamp on the other end, and let's go ahead and get this installed. Now we'll feed our clamp back down inside towards the turbo and insert the larger end after putting on the clamp over the filter. So after you've got your clamp on the outside of the filter, go ahead and feed our tube in, and then we'll just tighten that down to hold it in place. And again, we're using our 12mm socket. Now we can connect the other end of our tube to the turbo itself. Now it's a little hard to get in here with the clearances, but you know where the end of the tube is at, so we're just going to slide that over the turbo, and then we can tighten down the clamps. Now we'll tighten up the two clamps on our coupler here on the turbo using our 8mm socket and our swivel joint. Now we'll tighten up the two clamps on the air box with our 12mm socket. Now we can go ahead and connect our PCV hose to our fitting that we installed. And that's just going to fit over the top and slide down and clip into place. Now we'll go ahead and connect our bypass hose. And we'll open up this clamp. Slide the hose down over top of the fitting. And release the clamp. Now we can remove our air temperature sensor from our stock box simply by turning it counterclockwise and pulling it out. And once we've got that out, we go ahead and insert it into our grommet. Now we'll insert it into our grommet in our new tube and just work it in until it locks into place. Once you've got that in, we go ahead and reconnect our wiring harness. And that wraps up our review and install of the AFE Momentum GT cold air intake with Pro Dry S filter in black for your 18 and newer Mustang EcoBoost. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.